for?
Got it. Look here.
Immersing oneself in the depths of passion born from struggle is something every creator can probably relate to, even on a basic level. Regardless of career or hobby, chasing a lofty goal drives many. Yet, what happens when the end result isn't met with acclaim, but instead receives disdain or maybe even scorn? But I can't read everyone's mind, including Yang Bing, director of the recently released Ultizero action game Lost Soul Aside. Still, even before the title's final launch on August 29th, I had a feeling its mixed to negative reception was kind of inevitable. 9 years of development is more than enough time for any project to come under scrutiny, and that timeline alone raises expectations of whether the final product was worth the effort. Personally, I didn't have much in the way of expectations. I'd been vaguely aware of Lost Soul Aside since the announcement, but never actually followed the development closely beyond knowing its apparent Final Fantasy XV inspirations. Now, nearly a decade later, the game is here. I ignored online impressions and played through the campaign to form my own take. Now that I'm on the other side of that journey, I find myself in the minority. Despite clear issues with polish and narrative, Lost Soul Aside has become one of my most enjoyable games that I've played this year, and given the controversy around it, let's explore why, even if much more of that comes down to very specific tastes.
Are you alright?
Yes, thanks. You make a pretty good cushion, Kaiser.
Good to know.
I only managed to connect the shortcut thanks to you.
Lost Soul Aside follows Kaiser, a youth in Glimmer, which is an anti-empire force in the city of Primarius. He then works alongside his sister Luisa and other allies to overthrow the empire and live freely. After a failed operation, Luisa's soul is stolen and Kaiser allies with Arena, this ancient Dragonite entity whose power is diminished. Together though, they aim to restore Luisa's soul and defeat the Void Drax, which is an otherworldly threat endangering humanity. Bluntly, storytelling and character work in this game is the weakest areas. The premise could have been delivered in an emotional journey, but little actually resonates here. The cast rarely bonds or feels close before the stakes escalate early on. NPCs then lack personality and come across as simple filler. The narrative constantly throws in regions and terminology without any real cohesion, leading to a disjointed, messy plot weighed down by overambition. And unlike other titles, lore notes don't offer any clarity, and the result feels unfinished. There are, however, a few bright spots. Arena stands out as the most endearing character. He fills that sarcastic, supportive companion role similar to Grimoire Wise in Nier Replicant. He's not nearly as sharp, but his quips and blunt honesty add personality, and his bond with Kaiser managed to land with me by the end. The final quarter of the story briefly captivates thanks to shifts in the status quo, though these moments are exceptions rather than the rule. Antagonists remain poorly written, and the weak English audio direction, Arena aside, only worsens the presentation. Other voice options are available, which do help, but the English dub is especially rough. Gameplay is where Lost Soul Aside redeems itself, making up for some of the shortcomings in the writing. This is a hack-and-slash action game where Kaiser unlocks new weapons, expands the skill tree, and customizes weapons effects. Player expression is heavily encouraged here. Without exaggeration, the combat clicked with me almost immediately, echoing that feel of a long-lost PlayStation 2 era action game. Kaiser's arsenal includes a sword, greatsword, pole blade, and scythe, each with unique control styles, evolving movesets, mid-battle weapon swapping, and individual skill trees. Further, every weapon has a niche, like the pole blade excels at aerial attacks and the greatsword good at crushing single targets, but the systems are flexible enough that everything can be synergized. This freedom enables satisfying combos with weighty impacts. The skill tree itself then deepens these systems, extending combos, offering stat boosts, and even swapping skill variants that add trade-offs for new benefits. That risk-reward structure amplifies the already strong combat foundation. Given the backlash this game has faced, my enjoyment of its combat might seem surprising to you, yet the mechanics consistently gel, and the further you progress, the better it gets. Enemy design is decent, where foes are aggressive, telegraphed clearly, and respond dynamically even in groups. Defensively, players can block or dodge. Perfect dodges slow time down and create openings, while well-timed blocks counter glowing blue attacks with stylish animations. Enemies also feature break gauges, a now standard mechanic that fits well here, encouraging bursts of heavy damage before the gauge fills. Quick-time finishers accelerate this process, though using them at the right moment yields maximum rewards. Kaiser also has a stamina gauge which governs dodging, blocking, and certain weapon abilities. At first, this did feel unnecessary, but it quickly became clear that stamina prevents defensive spamming and maintains combat tension. Stamina items soften the blow a little bit, but I rarely needed them. Arena also lends some support in battle with abilities that unlock through story progression. Most deal supplementary damage or break gauge pressure, while one provides health regeneration in tight situations. They encourage varied strategies, especially in later bosses where learning movesets become essential. These boss encounters are consistently the game's highlight. Elemental affinities and status effects also matter more than you'd expect. Weapons can also carry elemental versions and crafted items. While not always offering real choice, they do provide meaningful aid in later stages. Accessories further enhance Kaiser's build. The mechanic I initially overlooked was Burst Pursuit, which adds a splash damage with a stamina trade-off where high-level play would likely rely on it. Kaiser and Arena can also fuse once a special gauge fills up, unleashing devastating attacks during this time limit. Reaching this form mid-fight always feels pretty rewarding. Another divisive design choice that I appreciated was the pacing of weapon unlocks. Weapons are introduced gradually, forcing players to master fundamentals before expanding options. Each addition feels earned, and tutorials along with the training room reinforce that learning curve. Exploration is another strength. Platforming and light puzzles frequently weave into progression, creating variety in the gameplay loop. Levels then feature meaningful side paths with rewards and gimmicks that keep areas distinct. Weapons also double as traversal tools, like the scythe as a grappling hook or a pole blade for hitting distance switches. The late game air dash further streamlines these movement options. Side content appears in the form of dispersed dimensions, which are timed mini challenges discovered organically in maps rather than tucked away into the menus. These areas add difficulty and rewards, and they can be replayed through later NPCs. I would say that this integration into the exploration helps sell the game's semi-open world level design. For all my praise of the gameplay, it does have some rough edges. Visual glitches occasionally obstruct the screen with blinding effects. Audio design feels unfinished, particularly during boss killing moves, and once I encountered a bug preventing interaction with the merchant NPC. Thankfully, I never ran into major crashes, and performance on PlayStation 5 was overall stable. Other players have reported some more serious problems, including missing skill trees or poor PC optimization, so experiences may vary. Weapon customization itself is another undercooked system. Upgrades are possible and you can slot in items for minor buffs, but the visual effects look awkward and unfinished. It feels like a feature that needed more time in the oven for sure. The postgame does fare a bit better. Beating the campaign unlocks boss rush, stage selection, and higher difficulty modes like hard and nightmare. And for those who are unaware, Lost Suicide actually started off as a boss rush game. Replay value in these modes are strong, and I'm eager to dive deeper into the content. Lost Suicide is a profoundly flawed experience. Its overambitious development shows through weak storytelling, poor character writing, and uneven polish. Its fairly high price point doesn't help its case either. Yet when viewed strictly as a game to play, it does have its brighter moments. Ability growth is well paced, combat feels both weighty and responsive, weapon variety offers real depth, and boss design is consistently engaging. Exploration and platforming provide additional hooks that kept me invested for well over 25 hours, and the post-game only adds more to chew on. This is not a game for everyone. Longtime followers will likely feel disappointed after nearly a decade of anticipation for this experience. But for those willing to accept its messy narrative and embrace its gameplay-first heart, Lost Suicide delivers a rewarding action-adventure reminiscent of PS2-era classics, and for me, it's a flawed but unforgettable adventure. NoisyPixel is giving Lost Suicide a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. NoisyPixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our feature content.
NoisyPixel.